Okay, hey everybody. It is April 17th, a Monday. This is dropping stuff already. This is the American Micro Podcast, episode 2. This one's Civil War to Civil Liberties. My name is Anthony Pago. Who else we got with
And
us?
I am Low Key, one of your other hosts. I'm coming at you from Humboldt County, Northern Cali. I got thunder and lightning outside, so that should add a little um, atmosphere to the broadcast. Um, Musician, poet, writer, as I've said in the previous one. Maybe at some point we won't have to introduce ourselves so much, but that's my curricula vitae. And Rodney, you want to tap in?
Yeah, so my name's Rodney Hubbard. I'm I'm here in Baltimore, Maryland. Otherwise known as Be More Careful. Um, Charm City, beautiful place. Yeah, it's just kind of like the Wild West on the East Coast. Uh, but anyways, yeah, like Loki said, I'm a singer, songwriter, musician, artist. Known these guys anywhere between, I don't know, 12 to 15 years or so. But it's a great situation we're in because we get to talk about stuff that makes a difference in the world. At least we hope so. So
That means something. Yeah,
yeah. So, but yeah.
yeah. I
So
think
what are we talking about today, guys?
Well, last time we talked about slavery, and I think we're kind of just like leapfrogging barely over into the Civil War through civil liberties. I guess civil liberties is a constant, ongoing thing, but
Yeah.
we're narrowing it down. We're getting down to the micro, where we start off about the Civil Wars. We're jumping a little bit off of the slavery into the Civil War, and then civil liberties is tied all the way into that through to today. So
and
I
right,
think
right.
Rodney, you were mentioning a little bit about the slavery business when we kind of pre-gamed a little bit, and
Right.
one of the questions, what was one of the, oh, actually that was Loki was asking like, would you have what would you have done? Or maybe that was Rodney. Which one of you said what would you have done? Yeah, it was Rodney.
Ronnie was talking about what would you do as a young man whose family owned a plantation and owned slaves in the South, and the Civil War
Yeah,
kicked in,
right.
and it's your turn,
And it's
right?
I had mentioned I had said like I don't think that I would have done it, but and then of course we all recognize that the pervasive idea was to be a part of this culture. It's hard to live out there and to go against the grain. You have to like get along to live, right? But I just found out recently that Gainesville, Texas. I'm in Oklahoma City. Gainesville, Texas is like right across the Oklahoma border. Literally, there's like the Red River, and there's a couple miles, and then the first town you hit is Gainesville. I just learned that Gainesville was where they the South the that wanted to build the new racist nation. They had hangings for the people in Texas who weren't having it. They didn't want to do slavery. Is that hail? You got hail going on there?
Yep, I got hail.
Crazy.
It's really going
Crazy
down out
weather in
there.
springtime 2023.
Yeah,
I had no idea that just south of the Oklahoma border, they had strung up people who wanted the Union to win the war because they were super racist in Texas. So
yeah,
they
yeah.
they took everybody and threw them up and ropes and everything. I had no idea that close. I mean, I can drive 2 hour drive from where I'm at, and I can go to a town where this piece of the Civil War, history occurred. I
I
did not
mean,
know it was that close to me.
I would venture to say you could find shit even closer
Yeah.
to where
Oh, I'm
you're at
sure.
now.
I'm sure, but this
You
was
know,
a major, a major side, and
yeah, yeah.
I feel like I would have been one of those guys who was strung up. I would have been, no, I'm not doing it. It's been a long lifetime of me not taking the easy road to make money. I've from very early on, I said I'm not gonna like trick people in any way, shape, or form. I'm not gonna
Mhm.
take the easy path. I'm not gonna, sell anti 5G like lotion or anything like that. It'd be so easy to
Mhm.
manipulate people, and I don't have the ability to turn off my ethics or my morals. I feel
Right.
like if I was born back then, it would have been the same. I probably wouldn't have lived too long. I would have been
Yeah.
strung up or chased out of town. So felt like I
Well,
feel like
I think that's a good point. When people say it was a different time, for example, people described Harvey Weinstein. Well, he's a dinosaur from a different era, but still sexually assaulting women, raping them, coercing them into sexual acts in order to land roles is fucking wrong.
yeah,
Period. And Vlad the Impaler, it was a different time, but still impaling people on spikes outside of your fortress, drinking blood, it's still kind of wrong, bro. So and here's the thing, I agree with you that who I am back then would have been in trouble, but I think if I had been born in the South, a white man to a family that owned slaves, I would have a very different perspective. I would have been raised around that white supremacy. I would
right.
have been indoctrinated at a very young age. Probably by the age of 6, I would have understood on some level that slaves were not equal to me. They were not human, or they were, what was it, 2/5,
3/5.
3/5, of a human. And so with that kind of indoctrination, it makes sense why so many people would defend their lifestyle, especially considering, as Rodney was saying, how many cubic yards of cotton was being pumped out of the South.
There's 3 million cubic pounds of
Over the
cotton.
whole time or per year?
No, that's 1 year, bro.
No,
Okay.
Oh yeah. That's what's 1 year. That's 1 year. Yeah,
Right.
300. Dude, do you know how much? I mean,
Come on, man. Gather yourself. Let's
no,
hear
man.
it.
It's like this. It's like, imagine, like every stand-up skit you've ever seen a black guy do about the South, where the guy's like, "Hey, man, I know you want me to pick this cotton, but whoa, what's up with the whip? What's up with the? Can't we talk about this? Can I pick at night? Is that a thing? Like, no, bro, that's not a thing." And the fact of the matter is, like, I always used to think about this stuff, like, bro, like, what would I be doing if I was there? Like, how would I
Right.
react to all that? Like, how would as I look, man, my mom was born in 1938. When I think about just being born in 30, I was born in 1950. I was born at the end of Jim Crow, basically at the beginning of like real civil liberties,
Right.
and civil rights, quote unquote. But being born a slave, I asked my mom, and she's like, "Yeah, of course we have members of our family that were slaves. Of course we do." But I mean, being an African American in this country, being a Black American, I would venture to say that 85 to 90% of people of African descent in this country have European blood in them.
Yeah.
And it's all because of slavery.
And
right?
the last names.
And the last name. So, like, I was just talking to a buddy of mine, and like my great grandfather is Welsh. I know exactly what he looks like. My last name is Hubbard. We have a family crest that comes from, that's a Norman name. That's a Norman name.
Right.
Okay. So I don't look like Rodney. I mean, Rodney Hubbard. I mean, it's like my last name might as well be O'Brien, or O'Neill, or McCarthy, or like, it doesn't matter, because I'm never really going to know the origin of my family based on hundreds of years of slavery and degradation and oppression.
Yeah.
And you're just not going to know those things. You were never, well, first of all, you couldn't read. You weren't allowed to read.
You weren't allowed to. Yeah.
You weren't allowed to. You were not allowed to be educated.
And
No,
since you couldn't read, you couldn't vote. But
no,
we're
you
getting
couldn't
ahead.
vote.
That's ahead of the. That's after the Civil War. That's
Well,
Reconstruction.
Right.
but it's still a part. It's still, but no. It's still a part. It's still a part of what happened, though, dude.
Right.
Look, you couldn't. You came off that ship. You were standing on a block. Okay, this is what the Civil War was all about. The Civil War was not about. All the Civil War was about was, hey man, I got to get mine. That's what the Civil War was about, bro.
It was about we want to keep our way of life. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, because I did want to mention it's not about states' rights, and we're not even going to brook any time to try to refute that argument, because it's a bullshit argument, and it's just something that people who want to cling to the Confederate flag and own libs would argue. This was never about states' rights.
Right.
Never.
It was about an economy that was born out of theft. It was about insane amounts of generational wealth that were generated out of theft. Not to mention all of the brutality that came with it.
Yeah. There's this really interesting gal. She did some interviews a year ago in 22 about and she worked for the CIA, and she started this project studying with the CIA and then on her own civil wars in other nations. The CIA has a mandate; they can't, they don't even talk about the United States. They can't legally, so they're talking about they're right, they're keeping track of all of these variables that seem to tip a war or a group of people into a civil war. And she did some interviews in 22, probably a year before then as well, because of the Trump and January 6th and all of that. So she got a lot of airtime and stuff. And she'd been doing the study even before Trump came into play, and all of her colleagues were like, "We don't know why you're doing this. It's not that interesting." And all of a sudden, it became massively interesting, and people were listening really hard. And she kept getting the question, like, what are some of the variables that you've noticed in other places? How does it apply to America? What causes a civil war? And there's a lot to speak of to that, but one of the primary factors is that you've got a group of people who either get outnumbered or begin to lose power, and it's a last ditch effort to hold on to and maintain that power, to ramp up violence and use that violence from the opposition, the new group, the group that's coming in order to try and get people who typically wouldn't be all for war or violence on board with your side to then basically force the other group to cease gaining power. So you're going to preserve your way of life, like you put it earlier, by creating a new nation is what they wanted, right? They wanted a slave, bearing nation. But they couldn't do it without the support of all of their neighbors, all of their sons, all of their cousins, and everything. And in order to do that, you have to show that the other side is threatening you physically, basically. So her point was, that's what's happening now. There's an effort to like get guns in everybody's hands, both the left and the right, and ramp up the violence in order to hopefully precipitate a civil war, so that that accelerationism can happen. And this is kind of the thing that happened with the United States with the first Civil War. Or the Civil War that we speak of when we speak of it historically, is that there was an attempt by an outnumbered group, because in the 1700s in the southern states, black people had begun to outnumber them, thanks to slavery and having them reproduce, forced breeding programs, and then just the way populations work. And so the populations start to outnumber, and you start thinking about how these people, if they get to vote, if they get generational wealth, will begin to outnumber you and outpower you, and that's going to be the end of your civilization as you know it. Your white, landowning, rich male-based society. And so what's left? I mean, you have to take it back through violence. Violence is the favored tool for groups that are losing their power and freak out and want to struggle and get that back.
It's also all American as fuck. So
well, I mean, it's human. It's very human. It's happened in a lot of different nations.
Fair enough. You're right.
I think one of the more interesting places where it didn't happen, where we were surprised by what happened, is South Africa. We totally expected the apartheid government to not cede power, to not give it, hand
Right.
it over. What happened there was the white business owners all of a sudden said, you know what, we're not on board with this anymore. We're not going to support the government and their racist ventures. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the end of it. The government had a new leader came in, and he had to hand over
To clerk.
power to the black government
Right.
representatives, and
Right.
that was a shock. Nobody in like 1980 or whatever would have believed that was ever going to happen. That would have been the first place anybody asked, any expert asked, where's the next civil war gonna happen globally? They would have said South Africa is definitely
Uh-huh.
gonna be the next big civil war. Now I suspect America is one of the answers. You know, it's climbing up the ranking system on that, where they go, where is it possible that a civil war is going to happen? And I would I suspect, I'm suspicious. I guess suspicious isn't the word. I suspect that the only way to curtail this would be for two things to happen. We need the conservative leadership to basically hand over power or convince their base to cut the shit out, and businesses need to stop their business as usual supporting financially
Mm-hmm.
the people who are trying to create a new civil war, in order for this to kind of turn around and do what
Right.
South Africa did. But I don't see that happening. We have such a long history. I mean, look, the civil rights movement happened 100 years after the end of slavery. It took
Mm-hmm.
100 years, and it didn't happen like easily after that hundred
No.
years. Like
No, it
that
did
100 year
not.
marker happened, and it got worse. People fought
Yep.
harder to
Yep.
preserve white
Well, I
supremacy when it
mean,
is.
look, no, go. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was it. I mean, they fought harder once they saw the writing on the wall. They
Well,
erected statues to remind everybody that white
yep.
supremacists were here and all that good shit.
Right. Right. Um, just real quick, touching on this, the CIA analyst who spoke about that. I don't know if it was her, but there was someone else that's been speaking about it, and they said it's already here. The
Right.
Civil War is here,
Yeah, it's been ongoing since. Yeah,
because a part of it is it's now the weapons of war are a lot more subtle and psychological, and so there's a lot of ideology and manipulation going on. Whereas, I mean, now if you want to get rid of a politician, you don't kill them, you assassinate their character.
yeah.
And so there's the culture wars have been a prelude to civil war for probably the last 20 years. Everyone losing their shit over books that, banning the Diary of Anne Frank, for example. All of these ideological
Dude, they
front
banned
lines.
the Diary of Roberto Clemente.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they
Roberto Clemente, dude.
yeah, yeah.
One of the most
It's
amazing Afro Hispanic. He was he Puerto Rican or was he Dominican? Anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry.
well,
Yeah, it's crazy.
we definitely want to get into that, but where we are in a civil conflict, and if it develops into actual little pockets of violence, which it could very well will do so, with militias forming and people thinking it's the end of the world, and doomsday preppers and all of this other shit that's happening right now, which there's a little bit of that up here. I've got people that are stockpiling weapons and buying
Sure.
into the
But
notion
that's all
that
over
this
now. Like
that the
I mean,
shit could
it's
go down.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Every state has that now. You just might not know them personally.
Here's the deal, dude. Again, I forgot the guy's name who wrote did the writing. He worked with Dave Chappelle. What's his name? The comic. Anyways,
Paul Mooney?
he's like, no, not Paul Mooney. He's the white guy. The white guy with the glasses. Anyways, he says he's got this bit. He says, yeah, all these guys out there in these, what do they call the 3%ers?
Yep.
Yeah,
I see those guys up here.
Whatever. He's like, think about it for a minute, man. He's like, there's 400 of them, and there's a guy sitting in a bunker in Nevada with a drone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Dude, I'm telling you right now, if you think a bunch of yahoos with beer bellies,
yeah,
with camos on that have never seen a battlefield, dude, look,
yeah,
I was in the Marine Corps almost 7 years.
yeah,
Trust me when I tell you, you know, the scariest thing in the world, besides a guy sitting in a bunker with a drone, is an exceptionally trained military, a Marine with
yeah,
an M16 or an M203 in his hands. Bro,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
just yeah, it's
yeah.
not even fair. It's
Yeah,
not going to
no,
happen.
no. This romantic ideal about we're gonna fight for our rights and go up against the government is laughable. It's fucking laughable. It was laughable 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. I mean, we've seen time, in Philadelphia with the MOVE organization being firebombed by the police with
Yeah, man.
helicopters. We've seen it
Ruby
in
Ridge.
Waco, Ruby Ridge, Waco, Texas. We've seen it again and again. If you think you're a little romanticized, I'm a fucking patriot and we got to save America, bullshit. You're done.
Well, think about it this way. So you've got the South, this agrarian, slave-ridden, catastrophic, capitalistic society. Okay, catastrophic in the terms of how their culture runs,
Right.
and how their social society runs, and how they treat the people that work for them. And then you've got the North, nothing but industry. They can just roll out. They can roll out cannons, weaponry, long rifles. It's the same thing, dude. You are not, and that's what happened to the South, dude. It's like, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna keep our slaves, and you're not gonna say anything about it. You're not gonna say anything. And if you do, we will secede from the Union. And Abraham Lincoln said, no, I don't think you're gonna do that. Nah, you're kidding, right?
Yeah.
No, we're not kidding. We're really gonna do that. And then you have the nerve at Fort Sumter to fire cannonballs across our bow, and we're not going to do anything. All right, it's on. It's on.
Break out the Gatling gun.
Yeah, 400. 4 years later, 600,000 dead men. 600,000 dead men, bro.
Yep.
I wish Sumter would have fixed the problem, but 100 years later, when they did the centennial celebration in 1961, right? At Sumter, they tried to hold the conference to do the whole centennial, the speeches and the fireworks and everything, and they set up the whole thing at a whites only. It's like a hotel or something, and it became the biggest debacle ever because there were representatives who were black who couldn't show up, who weren't allowed in. So the feds had to step in. I think it was the president who stepped in and said, we're going to have this in a neutral source. And the only place they could find it was, I think, like an aircraft carrier or something, because all of the buildings were segregated. No, there was no place where everybody could get along. So 100 years later, for the centennial, there are still the same racists. They are just now forced into the same union where they still feel, the same anger, the same generational, we're being forced into this situation we don't want to be forced into. So what they're going to have, instead of industry that's creating, cannons and weapons, over this time they've created an industry of insurgency, and it's gonna pick up. You had mentioned earlier, you were that CIA analyst, that was Barbara F. Walters. She agreed with you that they call it a civil war. There's just a few requirements for them to call it a civil war, and it can be one that's not divided by physical lines. It's divided by ethnic lines or whatever, ideological lines. Yeah. But she had mentioned we're going from one phase to the next one, either going from, I think she said going from phase 2 to phase 3, but whatever. The phases were the phase that we're on is where there's random, occasional, rare
Yep.
insurgency acts, like acts
Bursts
of
of
violence from an
violence. Yep.
insurgency. And then the next phase, the one that we're headed into, is where they're predictably constant, and that's
Yep.
what they're fearing. And that's what I'm talking about with like kind of the Southern mentality. Although it's everywhere now, it's been pushed into all of the states where we've divided kind of between rural and city living, urban living.
Urban.
It's not really that way, but it's pretty close to kind of an urban
And
versus
it's coastal as well.
rural.
It's coastal.
Sure.
It's coastal. It's
but
Democrat versus Republican. It's red and blue
Yeah, it's
state.
definitely that. Yeah, I mean, you can struggle with parties because there are people who are independents who are definitely against this racist conservative mentality. So
Right.
it's almost like a becoming less and less like a far right thing and more just kind of a they own the party on the right now. So it's kind of just a conservative right thing. And I hate that I have to say that, but there aren't people who are standing up against them on the right. Like if there
Mhm.
were people standing up against them on the right loudly, then I would agree that it's a far right problem. It's this thing that's further right than than all of the conservatives, but they're not standing up because historically that's what they excel at is getting in line. They get in line.
Right.
Whoever they vote in or whatever the new outrage of the season is, they all stand behind it. They vote
They're
for the guy
also
once
good
it's
at
time.
conquer and divide. They're good at conquering and dividing. They're good
Right.
at distracting you. Okay, it's like, I might be white and I might be poor, but at least I'm not a nigger, right? That's the deal.
That's it.
That's the deal.
It's incremental scales of privilege and access and power. And if I'm 2 points above you, then I'm gonna watch your ass.
Yeah,
And you're
Right.
gonna
yeah.
be
Well,
the problem.
dude, cops. That's
Cops,
dude.
overseers.
Cops, overseers. That's what they were
You
brought.
know.
That's they.
I mean,
Yeah.
not
man,
to.
it's just-
I think KRS-One said it best, and it's not Black Cop. It's the sound of the police. He has a line in there where he talks about where he basically delineates the word overseer into officer.
Got it.
Right? He goes overseer, 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 officer, officer, which I don't believe is a scientifically, yes, that's a correct etymological evolution, but he's talking about how the overseers became our police.
Right.
And if you go look at the original tin badges with the 6-pointed stars that overseers wore as they were patrolling plantations and enforcing brutality upon the slaves that were there or chasing them down, et cetera, on their horses with their torches, that is the genesis of our police departments.
And you're gonna get a lot of pushback. I've seen them online where people say,
Sure.
well, that there's not an exact lineage between the two, and even if certain groups don't have a direct line, they evolve into that. And a great example of that is out on the West Coast in LA, how you've got now 20 gangs in the deputies and the sheriff's system,
and it's finally coming to light. Dude,
yeah,
I mean,
what was it?
this is
1970. The Red Devils was the first acknowledged one, and now there's just so many.
Check it out.
It's hard to keep track of.
How did the Irish all become cops? They were co-op.
Well, yeah.
Right.
We talked about that in the beginning. You need somebody between the rich people and the ones they hate the most, and that eventually became the Irish.
But look at all your gangs in the sheriff's departments. They're all Latinos.
Yeah. Yep.
Most of them are Latinos, dude. And I hate to say this to my brown brothers and sisters, man. And you can get on me if you want, but dude, a lot of because I know.
But you're not getting on their case. You're pointing out that they are coming from a sense of scarcity and from a lack of other opportunities, so they become cops, and then they're given a little bit of power. And so they're going to band together and form a collective and enforce
or that
power.
white kid who's just out of high school, he's watched too many Jordan Peterson. He's totally
podcast or whatever.
Yeah, way too many Jordan. And what's the other guy's name who went to jail in Romania?
Tate, Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate.
That piece of shit.
Yeah. He's watched too many Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson podcast or shorts, and like video shorts, and that's, I mean, right now, dude, if you're, and I know this is a little maybe off subject, but if you're a young 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old white kid, I hope you're growing up. I hope you're growing in a way that gives you the ability to look at the formation of just who we are as a country and the ABCDEFG of what happened. I mean, it's like I was just reading some stuff about real quick about, and I'm just going to read this guy. I'm going to read this to you real quick if I can find it here. So the thriving African American community for African American Seneca Village.
But to segue back, I mean, we can get into that, but I want to point something out. You're saying you hope that these young white men can discern and see what's going on, but that's exactly what's not happening. Because
that's why I said it. Yeah, that's why I said
that's what I'm saying. Like there's a very concerted effort right now in Florida and in other states to completely remove CRT, which is a total fucking absurd dog whistle that they use all the time when that is absolutely not what's going on.
Just like woke.
Yeah, just like woke. They're literally stripping all of that information that could enable you to discern and to make an informed decision or to form a viewpoint about your environment where you might say, wait a minute, this is kind of fucked up. They're completely stripping, there are, and I should specify instead of just they, because they becomes this kind of ubiquitous boogeyman. We say they all the time. But in this case, there are politicians and there are think tanks and there are religious leaders that are making a very concerted effort right now to strip any of the last vestiges of being able to have a objective education where you can form your own opinion. Like we were talking about earlier, Pago was talking about it. This might have been in the one that we scrapped, but we both talked about like who I am now and my moral compass back in the Civil War. I'd have been fucked if I was in the South. I'd have been fucked. I would have been rolling with Newton Knight. And I would have been kicking it in the free state of Jones and riding up, fuck the Confederacy and going to war with them. However, that's me now. If I grew up there in the South as a white kid, I doubt I would have that view.
Right.
Now,
I mean,
you know what I mean?
I'm like right in that middle ground where I can pass as white. Especially with my, my speech, my affectation, because I was afforded, the opportunity to go and get educated around white people in nice schools. But I do have like a little bit of melanin to my skin to the point where I get pulled over when I drive through Texas more often than when I drive through other states up north. And we're talking about like liberties here. Whenever like slavery started, we started ushering slavery out. These laws started to pop up where you couldn't walk you couldn't walk in the South as a black or Native American without a torch and stuff like that.
Peonage laws
came in, and then came in like the voting where you had to do a math test and a reading test, and just like we're doing it now, like
history test.
They always start with little laws where we're doing it with the trans rights stuff where you're not letting people transition, and with abortion where you can't a doctor can't serve somebody or you can't help somebody into
drive
your car
across state lines.
Yeah. So you start with little laws, and then you make the base angry. That's the red meat, but it's serving a purpose. It's making like an actual legal enemy out of somebody, and then you start passing scarier laws, like in Florida, where they're reducing the votes you have to get to enact the death penalty. So now it's like an 8-4 instead of a unanimous vote. So then all of a sudden you've got the ability to falsely accuse people, and then you have a less stringent requirement, or like what do you call that? Like not requirement, yeah, it was less strict. Like the bar's lower
Right.
for executing people that you may have falsely accused of whatever.
And the velocity at which this is happening
Yeah,
is kind of wild. Like,
yeah,
this, I think in the past we would see this domino effect take a little more time to happen.
hmm,
However, this has been in the works for decades.
yeah.
And
It
we're
never
kind of,
left, dude. It never
well,
left.
but I want to talk about a particular piece of shit.
Okay.
Um, in doing, uh, I had a little video series a couple of years ago where I would talk about various things. And this guy, his name is Paul. I don't believe he's alive anymore. Paul, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name exactly. I don't give a fuck because he's a piece of shit. Paul Wayrick or Wayrich. Um, this is a case where I'm not going to make any effort to get his name right. He ran a conservative think tank. He was very Christian, and when Brown versus the Board of Education decided that it was time to desegregate schools, uh, the of course white religious people and white people in general flipped the fuck out. And so what they did, what a lot of and also so universities had to as well. And so what they did is a lot of religious institutions and universities um, started creating new little schools that were just for white people. But the IRS was like, you can't do that. That's a violation of what we're trying to do here. And if you do that, you don't get your tax exempt status anymore. And we all know that's how the church really makes their money. This is about the fucking money. So they would do things like, get one or two token black students there in order to qualify or whatever. But eventually the IRS was like, this ain't cracking. And so Paul Wayrick came up with the idea of utilizing anti-abortion sentiments as a Trojan horse to bring back segregation policies. And this is like peak fucking irony. Some of the original anti-abortionists call themselves the new abolitionists, which
Okay.
is fucking wild. But they
Uh-huh.
called themselves the new abolitionists, and the anti-abortion movement was entirely in its genesis a construct, a kind of like let's get all of these religious people really freaked out and pissed off about abortion and murdering babies, and from there we can start to foment all of these other policies that in which we can oppress and reintegrate. Segregate, right?
Right.
And this was 50 years, I don't know, 50 years ago or so. So their initial vision, there's no way that they can segregate, well, knock on wood, that they can segregate like that. So it has to be more subtle now. And now they've identified new enemies like trans kids and, gay people. So they've changed the boogeyman a little bit. But this originally started off as how do we get back to being able to institute racist laws and protect
Right.
our precious little white babies?
Well, they
Well,
did
this
a
is
good
state.
job by putting in judges that are going to be sympathetic to their cause on
They
both the
did.
federal benches and the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, we can't rely on what are supposed to be the most ethical, top-minded people in the nation. Even with
No.
the desegregation of the American schools, they ruled in the Brown 2, I think, or whenever the Supreme Court finally got to rule on that, they ordered people to what's the with all I've got this here with all something speed, all deliberate speed. It's so vague. The order was for them to desegregate with quote all deliberate speed, which is so vague that it gave them tons of time to
Mm-hmm.
just be like, well, we're trying, we promise,
We're working on it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we've got a very, very conservative leaning court right now with some corruption scandals that are opening up right now
Yeah.
that
With fucking Clarence.
may indicate there's some people who are bought and paid for by Nazi type, like,
Yeah.
and I don't want to
Yeah.
go too far in accusations, but at least collectors of Nazi memorabilia.
Collectors of Nazi shit. Yeah.
I mean,
Nazi
it's great.
memorabilia, bro.
And there
I
seems to
mean,
be some weird payment stuff going on where Clarence Thomas is not has been wrongly maybe defrauding his reports on his finances,
he
$100,000
has.
per
He
year from this
has.
business that's been closed down, shuttered since the 2000s. So like, where's this money coming from if it's not coming from this business that doesn't exist anymore? So now we can't really trust our Supreme Court anymore, which I hate to say that. I want to
Yeah.
believe in our laws, and I want to believe that our last line of defense is going to protect us if people start to try to segregate us
They're
again.
not.
Or
They're not.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are.
The
Look,
court
dude,
has been stacked. The court has been stacked. They're corrupt as fuck.
this comes down to state legislation, bro. That's what this comes down to.
That's
If you're in a red state, if you're in Mississippi, and your legislation says we're gonna take a group of white men and we're gonna oversee the city of Jackson, and we're gonna make sure that all the white people in Jackson are safe. If you're in Arkansas and the governor says, well, you know what, we're gonna look into was it child labor?
Mhm.
Okay, if you're in Missouri, and you're giving children 14, 15, 16 the right to open carry. This is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
When the court gave the right to anti-abortionists in each and every state the ability to legislate abortion, they can legislate everything now. They can legislate interracial marriage.
Yep.
Think about that, dude.
We're coming back to it. We're coming back to segregation.
Think about that, dude. And so it's 1861. The shot is fired in Sumter. We go to war. Jefferson Davis is like, this is our shit. No one's taking it from us. And then we take it.
Yeah.
And then we do 10 years of just basically, hey, man, you guys got to shape up or ship out. And they're like, you guys haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah.
And then 100 years later and 5,000 lynchings. I mean, dude, I was born in 59. I was born at the end of Jim Crow.
Mm-hmm.
I saw this stuff. I saw colored water fountains. I saw white water fountains. I remember when we were in Idaho, when I had to use the bathroom and the white guy at the door wouldn't let us in the restaurant and totally disrespected my dad. I was standing right next to him and I pooped in my pants in the car, bro. I remember not being able to swim in a pool at a hotel. Yeah, dude. Yeah. I swim in a pool in Tennessee at a hotel. My brother and I, Michael and I, grabbed our trunks and we were running to the pool, and our dad was like, oh no, we can't swim in the pool. And we're like, why? Because we're used to going on base because we lived in a little military bubble, right? Yeah. So I mean, the violence reaped upon, and I know, everywhere else is violent, but American violence, like you said, Loki,
it hits different,
dude. It just hits different, dude.
It's a very, it has a certain,
as Dave Chappelle says, it's
chef's kiss.
Chef's
dude, kiss.
Dude. It's like, dude, like,
and that's why when other people talk about, and I know I'm recycling old tropes here, but when they talk about, well, other people had slaves too, et cetera, we really need to be, and this is more for me personally with people that look like me, because we have not acknowledged just how horrifying, depraved, and insane American slavery was, and the reverberations of that and epigenetics, etc., that have dominoed into today. We did some really, really heinous shit. It wasn't big bank take it wasn't, and we talked about this in the previous episode, so I don't want to get too deep into it, but there's a real vast difference between a well-oiled economic machine that is entirely dependent upon slave labor to generate the amount of power and wealth that it did. And that's what the Civil War was about. That money, that fucking money. They always say follow the money, right? You know, if you want to get to the bottom of the story, follow the money. That's what that was about.
It made the North rich too, man.
It did. It did.
Yeah.
That's what I'm. Yeah, it did.
Yeah, everyone got rich off that, man.
I mean, considering there was a point where Abe Lincoln said he would not advocate for the freedom of black people, you know, why did he change his tune? What was that about? What economic forecast did they make to where they realized it's going to be far more profitable to shut this shit down than it is to let it to continue to happen? We don't get green policies in this country until it's profitable.
Yeah.
And by then it's too late. 30 years ago, people were saying, you know, if we keep doing the environmental damage that we're doing, we're fucked. And it wasn't until they figured out how we can make money with green policies, with wind, with, you know, fucking
solar,
you know, hippie fabric, you know, small artisanal batch, locally sourced coffee, hipster bullshit left and right, whatever you want to call it. It's not until it makes $1 that it starts to make sense. That was a horrible cliche, but
no, it really wasn't. It really
wasn't going for that pun, but it was once, you know. So
that's that special spice that makes American violence so unique, is that it's profitable. Our violence is profitable, and that's what makes it smell a little different, taste a little different.
Every fucking war we've gone to, well, I don't know about every war, but almost every war that we have engaged in has had a profit margin to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
Of course, there were ideological, and of course, ideology came into play. So, you know, something like the Bay of Pigs or some of our conflicts with Russia were ideological, but they were also about power.
I kind of
let them have power, you know. Then
there you go.
Then we don't have our power, and we can't turn that into.
I mean, okay. So let's go back. Let's go back to 1861, and just follow it. Follow it all the way from forget about what happened before that, because we all know about that. Okay. Mm-hmm. It was ugly. It's always been ugly. It'll always be ugly. But from 1861 until 1965, when they 64 and 65, when they signed the Civil Rights and the Voting Rights Act,
right?
You know, it was like, you know, when civil liberties became a thing. When all African Americans wanted was just, dude, treat me with some civility. Just give me the ability to make a living, to feed my family, to send my kids to good schools, to have them read, write, and arithmetic just like your children. Okay. It gets signed. Lyndon Baines Johnson says, you know, we get this signed. African Americans are going to be Democrats for the next 100 years. And this isn't about the collective. This is all about, like you said, like we've all said, it's all about money.
Yeah.
It's all about, you know what, we get these African Americans, because, you know, African Americans.
That's what Jim Crow was about.
Yeah. Well, dude, African Americans voted. They were most African Americans were, if not, I would say 85 to 90% were Lincoln Republicans, because he freed the slaves.
Right.
Once the Dixiecrats became Republicans and Johnson signed all that legislation into those two bills into legislation, African Americans switched to the Democratic Party.
Right. Right.
And then as soon as that happened, Richard Nixon becomes president. He moves the goalposts. And the Southern strategy begins.
Yeah. So,
and that, you know, we're still there.
So
the war is still on.
like now with what's going on, with all of these draconian measures being put into place, with the Supreme Court, um, not lately, but there was that real intense period where it seemed like they woke up every day like, all right, how can we fuck up democracy today? Passing laws left and right.
Yeah.
Even if you have evidence that you are innocent, you now do not have the right to appeal your case after a certain amount of conviction. Like, what is where, besides a consolidation of power, because that's what's happening. This is a consolidation of power by theocratically minded people. Where is the profit margin now? What are they going for? What's the money that they're chasing? Because we talked about how voracious the appetite of capitalism is in our last podcast. How, like, once you ran out of these people to put into prison, you had to find these people to put into prison. And now we're going to start putting trans people into prison and doctors that help them, et cetera, et cetera. So what's the money that these motherfuckers are chasing?
Well,
go ahead.
I can answer that. It's transitioning the United States from ripping natural resources out and manufacturing. We've kind of pushed away our manufacturing. We've taken a lot of the natural resources up. I mean, we innovate, and there's other newer resources that are useful here in the nation. But what we've decided we're going to do, and by we, I don't mean me. I mean the people you're talking about, are transitioning the United States into an oligarchy. They liked the setup that Russia had during the fall of the USSR, whenever all of a sudden there were these industries that could be taken, and then they could give the industries to people who are beholden to whoever's in power, and basically those people become banks for whoever is holding the scepter, whoever's in charge. So they get to live their lives of luxury and hold power and maintain this this presence over whatever regions and whatever sectors, like industrial sectors or whatever. We're transitioning into that right now, and that's where you're getting a lot of the division, and the money is going to be available once they can figure out who's on board, who's not on board, who's going to be in control. That's why it'll be useful to create this new party, because creating a new party is not just about creating a new type of Republican. They don't care if it's going to be named the Republican Party in the future. Really, if it's going to be a civil war, it's going to be a new nation. That's what they expect. That's the hope. The new nation will have women in control. They'll be in control, and whoever's the leader will be in charge of the new oligarchy, and the oligarchs will be the ones who fought through it and stuck with it. And they're like, okay, we're going to do the white supremacy thing. I'm on board. I'm going to be one of the loudest voices. That's what they're all hoping for. The ones who are the loudest right now, we're like, is this guy just like selling supplements? He's so loud. He's willing to, get death threats, or like have his people like dole out death threats and go to jail. Dude, they're not just selling supplements. These are guys who really have these visions of like becoming some of the new elites, because they don't have a shot at it right now. Not with the way things are presently, with the system that we're trying to fight for. You and I are trying to fight for.
Here's the thing. Well, so you've got people out there that really believe that they have a shot at becoming, someone who's in power, someone who's going to make a lot. Look, dude, like you said, there's only so many people that are in power. That's it. Yeah. You've got legislators in Tennessee that want to hang people now. You've got legislators in Tennessee that want to literally kill trans people. You've got legislators in South Carolina that want to firing squads. You've got legislators in South Carolina that want to literally put women to death for having abortions. Yeah. Like literally, like kill them. Okay.
Yep.
So, there's a certain point where, realizing that all this information that we have in front of us, and the ability to find it, and the ability to look at that information and say, okay, so we've been through this before. Remember back, 100 years ago, or 120, 125 years ago, when they like totally like divided us and conquered us.
Yeah. That's what the TikTok ban is about.
That's what the TikTok ban is about. So
stripping away access to information.
And that's what it's about. You've got low-level voters, okay? You've got people, MAGites, so if you want to, whatever you want to call them, people maggots. Who are maggots, make America great again. The delusional force that is behind that. You've really, man. I mean, you've really, and I've tried to explain this to a couple of my buddies, but you've really got to sit back and you have to understand American history. You have to understand,
And that's why
especially.
there's a concerted effort to strip that understanding away.
Yes, you have to understand that. You
Controlling
have to
the access to information via
anything,
via various platforms and stripping books out of libraries and out of curriculum.
controlling the access to anything,
Yeah.
not just education, just the controlling the access to movement, to being able to purchase homes, to buy cars, to make a living.
Yeah.
When NAFTA came through in 1994, I think it was the beginning of the end. Baltimore, look, man, it's always been a black and white situation in this country. From the day the first African stepped as a slave on this continent, it's always been a situation where European men and women who came to this country always thought they had a blood right, not a birthright, but a blood right to this country. They were ready to kill anything that moved and anything that breathed that didn't look like them. Okay? Or enslave it. That's what they did. Or enslave it.
All right. So,
and what do you do with that? So now you're going to be like, well, we're going to rise up. You're going to rise up against. You're going to do what? You're going to do what? You're going to rise up? What are you kidding me? Shut up, dude. You're not doing anything. You're not doing anything. You're going to be poor unless you know how to start some business or do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You know, it's just, dude, I mean, that's where we are. One of my buddies was like, oh, we're in the age of Aquarius. I'm like, dude, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything.
Spiritual paradigm.
Yeah. No, right now we're in the age of WTF. That's what we're in the age of. That's what we're in the age of. If we don't get this right, we're all. It's like that Rolling Stone song, "Under My Thumb." She's the girl who once had me down. Under my thumb, dude. Yeah, we're gonna be under someone's thumb, and it's gonna be on our.
All right.
I think about this. So, no, dude, no, seriously, I think about this stuff all the time, dude.
I know.
You know, it's you know. Okay, I'll shut up.
We have. No, I'm not saying to shut up, but I'm just.
No, it's just
I'm just trying to. I get it, but I'm trying to get back to, the idea that there's an oligarchy shift is really interesting to me. I hadn't really looked at it that way, Pego. Because I've been wondering what like we've seen how the oligarchs wrecked Russia, how they fucking gutted it. And now we're seeing Russia fail as a state. Couldn't even pull off an invasion of Ukraine. And so it always fascinates me that these
dude, we've been under that forever though, guys. Come on.
What I'm
Look at it. Think about it.
You
have rich white,
not theirs, not theirs. They're talking about a new one. They're talking about a new one.
I know you're talking about a new one, but it never. I had to look. A bunch of white guys came over. They're like, "Hey, is this India? No, this isn't India. Oh, do you own this land? No, we don't own this land. Great.
You don't say.
You don't say. We come over. You know, hey, let's write this contract for ourselves that gives all of our lineage, you know, rights to all this land for the next 400 years
in perpetuity.
Till perpetuity.
Right.
It's been like this forever. So all of a sudden, you know, we get this black president that comes through, and we're like, wow, man, we just had a black president. Everything's cool. No, Barack wasn't any different. Dude.
Yeah, but we didn't do that, and I didn't do that.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. You didn't do it. I didn't do it. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And now because of that, we get the orange monster. Okay. Mm-hmm. We get the Cheeto who comes through, and he gives every racist
insect.
Every insect the ability,
permission.
He
gave them permission
to come from under that rock and say Jews will not replace us.
Okay, so
the second wave of the oligarchy is coming. I'll give you that.
All right, that's
I understand your point, Rodney. That we came from a place like they want to return to. That's the deal. Is like it has changed. You're saying it's always been that way, but here's the deal. It was like they want it to be again. It changed, and that's the reason they're freaking out now. And that's the reason they want to usurp power. They wouldn't need to usurp power. There would be no efforts to take power by force if it was exactly like they wanted it. Because it's changed in certain ways. Look, women couldn't have a checkbook. They couldn't buy homes. Like they
couldn't open a bank account in the 1970s. My mom couldn't put her name on the house that we bought in 1972. They wouldn't even let her put her name on the deed.
Their husbands could murder them.
Yeah, man.
They were property. Same thing with black people. Same thing with natives. So things have changed. Yeah. Things have changed, and they don't have that type of oligarchy anymore. They want it back. They want it back.
That's what's happening.
Tennessee, look what happened in Tennessee last week. Dude,
but I think what
so crazy,
I was saying is they're making a very concerted effort.
I agree 100%. No, I agree with you guys. It's not like like I disagree. I'm just saying I can't wait until we have a conversation about the indigenous people of this country. And I mean, I know maybe I'm stepping out of bounds here a little bit, but I mean, imagine this. So you're an African American slave, slavery's over. And you go out west and you join the American cavalry and you become a buffalo soldier. And your job is to build, all those buffalo soldiers built most of the forts throughout the West, right?
Yeah.
Like most of those black cavalrymen built, I would say 85% of it, like when you see, most of these movies with, the white soldiers, no.
Yeah.
Most of imagine that, dude. You're an African American.
Was founded by them.
Yes, exactly. So now, but think about it. So it's 1866, 1867. You've got the Indian Wars out on the plains.
Yeah.
And you're an American. You're a Native American, and you see these brown faces with this woolly hair, and and now we're fighting each other, dog. Mm-hmm. Think about that, man. Yep. Think about that, bro. We're going to take you guys, whom we enslaved, and we're going to have you fight these guys, whom we just want to wipe off the face of the earth.
Yeah. I mean, like
we were talking about earlier with the Irish. I mean, George Washington was like, no, we're not going to turn black people into soldiers. And then he turned around on a dime and said, no, wait a minute, let's use them. And then 10 to 20% of the armed forces were all of a sudden were black fighting their wars because of that mentality. You can use the people that, are less of your enemy against your biggest enemies. It's again, part of that divide and conquer, but it's a buffer zone. It's like, why should I send my children out there, or all of my children? I don't have to send all of my children out there. I can take some of my not worst enemies and pit them against my worst enemies. Create a buffer zone. We're talking about the Irish and them becoming cops and everything like that. So I mean, it's a long held American tradition, and it's not a good one.
This country is a trip, dude. It's just
wild.
It's so just mind blowing. Like did you guys really think like this? Like you really thought about that? Like you made that happen?
They made that choice.
You know what I'm saying? Like they made that happen on purpose.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so we are seeing the echoes of that happen now in what's in what's happening right now. I'm just trying to bring it around to
no, dude, you're right.
This I have a theory that what happens is the people that run the shit, run the show, they have their occasional meetings. I don't know if they wear a bunch of masks and have group sex and, and fucking and then get down to business or whatever. But
big horse head on.
Big horse head. They roll out a map on a table that's been built by fucking children slaves or whatever, and they have their big old daggers, and the whole place is backlit with candles and shit, and they're carving up territories. But I think
eyes wide open, eyes wide shut. What was it? Eyes wide open. Yeah.
Eyes wide shut.
Eyes wide shut. Yeah.
But I think what happens is there's an agreed upon. All right, here's the basic script that is going to happen. For example, at some point we're going to deploy these military drones in whatever war is happening, and then from there we can start kind of bringing around the notion of smaller, more accessible drones that people will buy and play with. But so that'll be a little more acceptable to where we can start deploying drones within cities, and then we'll have robot dogs and all that shit, right? So here's the script. We know what's going to happen. Here's the technology. Here's how we're going to roll it out. Here's how people are going to accept it.
Wow.
And whoever then lands the role gets to implement that. So here's the script. And then, for example, it comes down to McCain versus Obama. And Obama wins.
He's in a little black room.
And then they give him a fucking Nobel Peace Prize. And then he starts deploying drones and wiping out whole families in Afghanistan.
Birthday parties.
That's the script, and it's whoever gets in there. So
weddings.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, all right, guys, gather around. Here's the plot. Here's the opening act. Here's the conflict. Here's the resolution. It's going to happen over this period of time. Here are the roles. Have at it. And so Obama gets in.
And I get to write the theme song.
Sure, have at it. It should be the sound of bodies being thrown into a wood chipper.
Yeah, right.
That should be the soundtrack. So there's an agreed upon narrative, and then it's up to all the different players to go for it and see what they can get. And that's where you get the ripples and the disruption. That's where Trump can worm his way in and kind of fuck with the narrative a little bit. But there's a script, and it's gonna happen. And if he gets too far one way, they're gonna be like, "Nah, motherfucker, you're getting out of line." Or Putin starts acting all fucking crazy, and he's like, "I'm gonna fuck with Ukraine," and they're like, or they're like, "We do need to have a limited nuclear exchange at some point, so that we further freak the fuck out of people and also take out some problems." So whoever wants to kind of stir that pot and create that friction, so we can start deploying that shit. You know what I mean? Like there's a
China, Taiwan, brick. Yeah.
Now that's fucking wild. That's interesting shit. You got 5 nations.
Yeah.
India, South Africa,
Brazil,
North Korea, Brazil, Russia, China, and they're all about to create a new fucking currency.
And dude, don't forget that China is like going headfirst into Africa, like hard.
Oh, they've been doing it for a minute now.
Yeah, and I mean
they're exploiting the fuck out of Africa.
Yeah, man, like they're in it to win it, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like, it's not even funny.
I don't know what that script is about. I don't know at what point did they agree. All right, we're gonna have to, introduce a new currency. Maybe it's to destabilize the market enough to where other disaster capitalists can come in and exploit some other things. Whatever that's going to do to the U.S. dollar and the American economy is going to be a motherfucker.
Well, what's it going to do to the citizenry? That's what you got to ask yourself, dude.
Yeah.
What is it going to? What is it going to do to civil liberties? What is it going to do to people who?
This is why I'm sticking to this small town, man.
What is it going to do?
Where the supply chain for food will not be disrupted.
What's it going to do? I mean, let me tell you something. I live in Baltimore, right? I know I had something on my mouth, but I live in Baltimore.
I just figured you were eating sunflower seeds.
No, but I live in Baltimore. It's a town of about 560,000 565,000 people. It's got a bay. It's got all the. It's like an East Coast town with a Wild West mentality.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. I mean, it's just one of the craziest towns, one of the craziest cities with some of the coolest people you'd ever want to meet, dude. These people
So what do you think is going to happen there with all this disruption and chaos?
Holy chill, dude. Because it's a black city.
Right.
It's 68% African American. No one's gonna.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah.
You're on a plane. There are 3 black guys on the plane. It's another skit by David Chappelle. So you're on the plane. 3 black guys on the plane. Okay. Some guy in the back. You're in the middle of the flight. You're halfway over the Atlantic, and some guy in the back goes, "Everybody shut up and don't move. I have a gun and a bomb." And, the one black guy looks at the other black guy, and the other black looks at the other black guy, and we both shake our heads like this. And you know what that means? It means we're not going to do anything.
Not my problem, buddy.
Not my problem, buddy.
Yep.
Oh my god.
And that's what I'm telling you, man.
Yeah. We'll let you guys figure that out.
Yeah, you figure that out, man. Because no.
I'm not John McClane, motherfucker.
No, brother. I'm not going to jail. I'm not jumping off something. No.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen. Because I'll give you a great example. So I'm at my place. It was Sunday. I make some smoothies. I make some coffee. Go down to Roland Heights.
Making some smoothies.
Yeah, right. And
making
some juice, right? And I walk into this. So I'm at this. I go down and get to the Starbucks, and I'm about to enter the door, and these 2 teenage girls walk out. Martin Spalding, lacrosse players.
Mm-hmm.
Their dad. I said, "Oh, excuse me," and their dad walks out, and he goes, "Nah, man. So why these are white people, right?" They're like, he's like, "Nah, man, it's all you." And then their mother walks out, holds the door with her elbow, and says, "Have a great day, man." I'm like, "You too, man." That's Baltimore, bro. That's Baltimore. When you're in that kind of situation where you talk to some girl who's white with her little white rusty little kid, he looks like Rusty with the freckles and the red hair.
Oh, that kind of Rusty. Yeah,
that kind of Rusty, right? And you're like,
fucking the nerd from Breakfast Club.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, hey, literally, like, hey, are you from Baltimore? Yeah, born and raised. I'm like, you ever, get into a conversation. I'm like, blah blah blah. She's like, oh man, I'd never leave. I would never leave Baltimore. Talk to people. Where are you from? Oh, I'm from Cleveland. How long you been in Baltimore? 17 years.
Right.
And these are white people, dude. Like dude, when you're let me tell you something about black people. Black people, and you guys know this. Black people, by and large, are some of the most loving people on the face of the planet. Like, we know if you're down, we're gonna take care of you. Like, nothing is going to happen to you. We're gonna open up our arms and we're gonna hug you, and no one's gonna mess with you, dude. No one's gonna mess with you. It's just our culture. Like, of course, it's just like anything. Like the Incas and the Aztecs. Of course, you chop off a few heads, they roll down the pyramids. But that's another thing. But but I mean, it's like, yeah, you've got to be in a town like that, or a town like. Yeah, Jesse. I mean, like, it's like, dude, come on. Like, you're. Do you know where he lives? Do you know where he lives?
We're going to need community more now than ever.
Ever.
Yeah.
So how far is the ocean from your house?
Probably a quarter mile away.
Jesus.
Dude. I've got, if I go out my back door, I go through this thicket. I go up this hill, top of the dunes. I can see the ocean in the distance. Go down the walk through another thicket, and there's the beach.
Nice.
That's insane.
If I go out
That's
the
ins-
driveway, hop into my car, and hit the road out there, and drive 5 miles into Arcata, I'll drive past 4 or 5 pastures full of beef. That's good. That's food. Alone farmers markets, or it's and more importantly, this is an enclave of very forward-thinking people.
Yeah.
I've seen 1 or 2 3%er tattoos, but they tend to be outliers here. You go farther out, you've got meth gangs, you've got pot farms, you've got the tracksuit mafia, which is this
The Russians.
No, not the Russians, the Bulgarians.
Okay,
Is it
same
Bulgarian
thing.
or Bavarians? Bavarians are German. It's the Bulgarians.
Yeah.
Like I said, back when they were done with their orgy, and all the gangsters were sitting there carving up territory. Colombians, you get a lot of the cocaine. Yakuza, you get a lot of the finance crimes. Triads, you can get this. And I would imagine the Bulgarians are like, well, what about us? Well, all right, why don't you go try to colonize the pot farms in Humboldt County? And it's interesting.
It's
Because of the decades of outlaw culture here, there's a lot of things that are impenetrable, and people are going to try. People will try, most definitely. There's people are looking at moving up here to get away from the bay, even though it's pretty far removed. It's not like you can just drive 2 hours and go check out.
How far is the bay?
How far Symphony. It's about 5 hours, so it's not like people from the bay are going to relocate up here and then when they want to go to.
I mean, they must really want to get away from the bay.
Yeah. But
yeah, I mean, if you're moving to Baltimore, man, if you're like, if you saw my place would probably cost $800,000 to $800 to $1 million in San Diego.
In Cali, yeah.
Yeah, it's a 3-story, 2,400 square foot, totally redone.
Man, I got to come out and visit.
Dude, it's so sick. And then my neighborhood's sick. And then it's green. It's in the summer, in the spring and the summer. It's probably one of the most beautiful places you've ever seen in your life. It's just gorgeous. Okay. In the winter, it's cold and it's stark because the leaves are off the trees, just like in Oklahoma, Yeah. But here, dude, it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. But at the same time, that being said, there is nothing like San Diego, California.
So beautiful.
That's true.
Nothing. There is nothing like San Diego. Nothing.
True.
I mean, do I miss it? With every ounce of blood in my body. Like, I miss it every day. I think about it all the time. But I mean, that being said, here we are. It is what it is. But back to, I mean,
let's not bore the listeners with our
extracurricular junk.
Extracurricular tourism, not tourism, but
Yeah.
But let's wrap this up. I mean, it's not like we can put a bow on it, but and we'll certainly continue a lot of these themes in the next one.
I mean, it's just like
basically it's an oligarchy trying to take shit, and
you got to be ready for what's coming.
Yeah, and the blueprint was kind of formulated in the Civil War.
Yep.
And here we are.
Yep.
Dude, this is not the truth, dude.
Yeah, people who say I'm not into politics, I don't do politics. They're fooling themselves. That politics is just life.
It's all politics.
Yeah, it's all politics.
There's a reason why. There's a reason why in our prison system, relationships between different groups are called politics.
Yeah.
You talk to anyone who's been in that environment, and when they say politics, people that have been there are like, well, what do you mean politics? It's not.
Yeah.
It's human interaction between various groups with different interests that
it's always
are vying
the people
for power.
in a place. It's always the people in a place of privilege who say that. It's the people who have the privilege to not give a shit about what's happening on the day to day to people, whether somebody's getting shot up or whether they're going to be on the chopping block first when shit hits the fan, if shit hits the fan in our lifetime. So
coming.
I mean,
It's coming. Listen, man, these all of these
kids
people
get killed in these schools. How many schools are getting shot up on a daily? How many churches? How many banks? How many?
Listen,
what?
I just finished a song called "Everybody Can Get It," and that's what's happening. We are on the verge of everybody can get it. So I exhort you, people of Earth, be a decent fucking human being. It's not hard to do. You should give a fuck about people that don't look like you, that don't have money like you, that don't believe in what you believe. You should give a fuck.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that hard. I was watching. There you go. Everybody can get it. Everybody can get
it. Everybody knows just what to do. Everybody can spit it.
I'm gonna email you the song. It's a very rough mix. We're gonna have to get you on the remix,
dude. No, but everyone.
Anyway,
it is coming, dude. Everyone can get it. It's the truth. It's like that disease that you don't want.
Yeah,
it's crazy. So, sorry.
Oh, on that note, all right, Danny Downer.
Anybody who's gotten this far, thank you. We hope you don't get the disease that everybody's getting, be it the clap or
or the clap back or get clapped on.
But thanks for joining us for this episode of American Micro Podcast. Thanks, gentlemen. We'll see you in the room.
I foresee in one of our upcoming episodes a rambling discussion about the Illuminati and who they are and who they are not.
Joy. I can't wait for that.
Let's get it.
Maybe we'll have drawings.
Yeah.
Or sunglasses.
Okay. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
All right, man.
Gentlemen.
Peace, love, and
Stay
happiness.
safe out there.
Will do.